Hi there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. Today I have got a really fun yet simple technique, and this was based upon the floating elements card that I did a little while ago. And I will, if you are interested or you haven't seen that video before, I will link it down in the description box below. But I am starting off with this paper pad here. This is called Playful. And if you already have scraps or strips of paper that you can use, then that is going to work even better. I have done a great job of using up all of my scraps recently, and I am definitely very low on them, which is exactly where I like to be. But for this one, I am going to add some double-sided adhesive on the back. Now the stick-it here on the left is a very, very thin double-sided adhesive. This is best when you plan to do die cutting. The scrapbook.com sheets on the right are thicker double-sided adhesive. They are very, very strong double-sided adhesive, and these are the ones that I'm going to use today. Often you can pick these up half price. Very, very often you can pick them up half price, and so this makes them pretty affordable. I have cut these down into some strips previously. I can't remember which project, but I thought that this would work for today, so I'm just going to add these onto the back. This is how I add them down nice and flat and in line with the side of my cardstock. I just pull back part of the double-sided adhesive at the back. So I pull down a little bit from the top, and then I just kind of bend it off to the side so that I can use it as a little tab to pull down. I line up the bottom whilst I hold up that piece that is exposed at the top. When I've got it in place, I push down at the top and then pull the tab down, and that way it is nicely lined up and I don't end up going wonky or skew-whiff as I pop down the double-sided adhesive. Then once I have cut those out, I just roughly cut around the outside. All I'm going to do is your typical paper trimmer, and I'm going to cut these into some strips. These were just the gorgeous colours that were in the paper pad, and so this is what I chose to use. Often if you don't feel confident in putting colours together or choosing colours that coordinate or that are going to go well, then generally you can fall back on the idea that a paper pad, all of the colours in a paper pad are going to match and coordinate in some way. So you could definitely do this with anything that had a pattern. You could even add a pattern, even a tone-on-tone kind of pattern to this plain coloured paper if that's what you would like, or you could try, or you could use pattern paper to begin with. You can use whatever you have in your stash that you are going to create this with, and I am just cutting all different widths. They are all pretty skinny, but they are all different widths, and I didn't measure them. I just went for gold, and that makes me the happiest when I don't have to measure things specifically. So each one of these little strips now has that adhesive on the back. Definitely you could, if you wanted to, kind of cut the strips first and then put skinny adhesive on the back if you had like a tape roll of double-sided tape. But that would, for me, be more time consuming anyway, so that's why I choose to use the big sheets. Now this here is the 4-inch roll of mint tape. You will often see me use this in the 1-inch rolls as well. You could also use some Masking Magic or any kind of low-tack paper is going to work really well. If all you had on hand was some masking paper, then you can use that, or you could just put down some temporary adhesive onto a sheet of scrap paper. Anything that is going to kind of temporarily hold these pieces in place whilst we create our pattern. Now here I'm putting down the strips coloured side down, so that leaves the kind of adhesive side up, and it does mean that you can't specifically see all of the colour and kind of which colours you're putting next to each other. But I can see enough. I can see when I choose them, and I can also see little bits poking out from the behind the adhesive, so this doesn't bother me at all. And I have all different lengths here. Sometimes I'm cutting them off and I will pop them down in another place, because obviously I won't end up using this full kind of width that I am creating here, and I just want different colors, different widths, different sizes, different lengths, all next to each other, so there is no rhyme or reason. And this is why it's really good to use up scraps, because even if you have some little ones in your stash, these are going to fit in perfectly. And how often do we kind of cut off a slither of a card or a card front or something? So it is worth keeping all of those little bits and pieces, because you never know when they are going to come in handy. So I am just working my way around in a circle. Now I had a plan for this all along, so I'm not creating like a specific really perfect circle in the middle. if you wanted to do that, then you could, you know, like take a circle die or a cup or something round and draw around it on the low-tech paper so that you get a circle to follow. I knew that I was going to be die cutting mine. That just makes my life easier, and it means I don't have to worry about all of the points fitting directly into the middle of the circle at this point. That just was easier for me, but again, there are lots of different ways to do this exact same technique, so you can have a play with it or do whatever you think is going to be easiest for you. Now, as I am going to fill up, going around my circle, I'm trying to fill up all of the little spaces that look like they could do with a little more added. And so I just kind of, as I said, no rhyme or reason, just going around my circle and filling up and putting in bits. I am cutting them down to make them shorter, cutting them to make them fit, just whatever I can really fit in. And I do want them to be kind of as close together as possible without overlapping. I don't want any of them to really overlap unless they are right there in the center, which is where I know is going to be die cut out. Now, obviously there are not many supplies. You probably already have most of the things that you need to create this little floating starburst kind of card, but anything that I do use, then I always try my best to link everything down in the description box below this video. Sometimes you have to click on the show more button. Obviously if you're watching this on a TV, then it's not possible as well, but if you are on a tablet or a cell phone or a computer, then you are able to click on the show more and there will be a list of everything that I have tried to include and used in this video. Now here I am pretty much finished, and of course you can kind of add bits and pieces as you go, but I am going to be using an acetate sheet. These are the ones that I use for die cutting. See how it says works well with metal dies? These are the ones that I prefer to use if I'm going to do any die cutting at all. I have two types of acetate that I keep. One is that works well for die cutting, which is this one, and the other one I use is the one that works well for heat embossing. So it is a heat resistant acetate, and those are the only two that I keep in my stash. Now I'm going to peel back all of these little strips of adhesive. So take off all of the release paper, and that means that the sticky side is going to be facing up. And this does take me a quick second, but is not too bad. It is a much quicker way than adding in any liquid adhesive or anything like that. And when I'm using acetate, I try not to use liquid adhesive because it just seems to work better for me to use some sort of dry adhesive. Now I have my sheet of acetate here, and of course this is going to be slightly bigger than what I need, but at the moment I am just going to pop this down on top of my project, and it's kind of all skew. If I know it's hard to see the acetate, but obviously I can see where the center is to my pattern, and I wanted that to kind of end up being off center, if that makes sense. So when you're putting down the acetate, you kind of have to ignore that sheet of masking paper because that is purely there just to hold everything. So now I'm taking a little pair of non-stick scissors and going around the edge of the acetate and cutting off anything that just roughly hangs off the edges there. And then once we have done that, we can turn over our project. I want to make sure that all of those pieces are well stuck on, so make sure that you give it a good press down and kind of make sure everything is adhered really nicely to that acetate. And then I'm going to lift up the low tack paper, and this is why it's good to use a low tack one, because you don't want to have this rip at this stage. I did have one little red strip there that I accidentally put the wrong side up, but I can either pop that back on later. And this is what we have so far, and I know it looks like a little bit of a mess at the minute, but trust me, this is going to look really, really gorgeous. So as I said, I always knew I was going to die cut out the center, and this just tidies everything up gorgeously. This die was sitting loose at the top here, and I feel like it was meant to be because this is the one that I end up picking, and you can kind of choose where you want your center to be now. So I don't necessarily have to go to the center of where I've created those strips. I can go just a little bit off for that. And then I'm just going to rip off a little bit of that low tack tape because that is going to be perfect. I may as well reuse it. I always, when I use like a sheet like that, I just stick it up on my workspace in front of my eyes so that it's right in my line of vision, so that I use that first instead of getting new paper off the roll, and I just keep using it up until it is gone, and then I can go back to using the stuff on the roll. I've run this through my die cutting machine, and this cuts that circle out really easily, no problem at all, and that kind of cleans up the center and makes it all look all really nice and tidy. Even the circle here was kind of cool, so I didn't feel like I could throw that out. I haven't got a plan for it at the minute, but it still looked really cool. So this is what we have so far, and as I said, the acetate sheets come as a 5 by 6 inch sheet, so I knew that I was always going to have to trim this down, and this is the hard part. It's like deciding which part of my creation that I want to keep. So you can see I'm kind of turning it around and turning it around, and I don't want to cut off any of it. Perhaps I maybe should have just made a kind of custom sized card so I could fit more onto it, but that's okay. Even the strips that came off, the acetate strips that came off, are very, very cool all by themselves. So I may end up keeping those and using those for something as well. But here is where it kind of all starts to come together. This looks gorgeous when it is put on top of my card base, and I trimmed this down to be 4 by 5 1/4 inches, the acetate that is, and that means that it's going to have a gorgeous little clean white border around it, and there's kind of enough strips of paper that it does make for a really clean border. You can see that there's a nice border around it. I am taking these, I think this is the Chunky Greetings, just for you, and whilst I have my acetate laid down there, I'm going to stamp this in some VersaFine Onyx black ink, and this sentiment fits perfectly right in the center. Now, just for a little bit of extra dimension, I have these super skinny foam strips here. These ones are fantastic. They are from scrapbook.com. As I said, I will link these things down below, but any skinny foam double-sided adhesive is going to work. And all I'm going to do is pop up the ones which are thick enough to hide this skinny adhesive. Now, I did do some really, really skinny strips, so some of these are going to be, like the foam is going to be far too wide for some of the strips, but it is going to be able to go behind enough of them to support it really nicely. So I felt like there was plenty of support by the time I had popped on all the foam, and that will hold up and not be affected in any way. So this was the perfect foam strips to pop behind here. Now, just to let you know as well that I'm going to be doing a giveaway on my Facebook group, because we are very, very close to hitting our 10,000 members. And I am so grateful for that group. We have the most amazing, supportive community over there of like-minded crafters. So I will be doing a giveaway over there once we hit our 10,000. If you would like to go and join our group, then I will leave a link down in the description box below. Or you can find us at Come Crafting with Natasha and come join us. But other than that, this is my gorgeous floating starburst card for today. I had so much fun creating this, and I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Thank you so much for joining me, and I really look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thanks, bye!